What's up, everybody? Welcome back to CK. I am yours truly, CK. And I know last time we talked about school, the topic of engineering. I hope some of you find that very interesting or insightful. Today, I am also just, curious about another topic in school, the subject of philosophy. I think that's something people like me and other people who don't study philosophy are curious or wanting to read up on just because they want to learn about the world and how it works. And I think that's always something people should aspire for philosophy. But will we get those answers question? We'll see. And also,
Probably not.
am I right? But also, the topic of grad school. I think that's something a lot of people who are in school right now or in high school who are thinking, do I need to go back to school or get higher education? Is grad school for me? I just got finished. I finished my bachelor's 2-3 years ago, and I'm just trying to figure out, do I need a grad school? I don't know, but we'll see. What better person to ask, and then my guest here today with me. Hopefully she'll introduce herself.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, CK. I'm thrilled to be here. My name is Elise. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. I have an undergraduate degree in philosophy, as you might have guessed. And currently, I am pursuing my PhD in philosophy at the University of Wisconsin.
Well, it's an honor, Elise, to be here.
Thanks, same.
It's a long trip to come from Texas to Wisconsin. The weather is totally different.
Oh yeah, it's very, very different. Last winter was my first winter, and I had to shovel some snow for the first time. It wasn't too bad. I survived, so.
Well, anything is possible.
Anything is possible.
Don't let your dreams be dreams.
Don't say that to a professional philosopher, though.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, they won't let you get away with that one.
So since we are talking about philosophy, I think a lot of people like to start from the beginning and understand the concept of what is philosophy? What is it?
Yeah, that's a great question, CK. So, literally dozens of books have been written on this very topic. What is philosophy? The way I like to think about philosophy and what it is in general is it's the study of everything, and it's the criticism of everything. So, philosophy has dozens of subfields. There's political philosophy, philosophy of biology, also ethics is a big one, logic, philosophy of mathematics, all sorts of fields. So pretty much any discipline you can think of, there's a subfield of philosophy that addresses that discipline. And what philosophers in those fields do is they look at the research that's going on at the current time, and they criticize the research. And I think I had a professor who said it best. He said that philosophers hold the rest of the disciplines accountable. And I think that's an excellent way to put it. That's what we do. We look at research, we look at what society is doing, and we criticize it in an effort to make it better. So
basically the world's biggest critic.
Yeah.
That is something I don't even know myself, because all I think about philosophy is those typical famous ones, Socrates, Plato, and I think a lot of people think it's just literature and that's all it is. Too many questions and complicated answers.
Or not enough answers a lot of times.
It's true. Can you truly answer? That is something. Can you actually answer enough?
That's a question for philosophy. Can you answer enough? Is it possible to supply an answer that really answers everything you want it to?
Guess maybe we'll never know. That is great. So knowing a little bit more of philosophy, I guess a lot of people probably have just read philosophy books and haven't truly went to academia and study it. I wonder, what is it like to be studying psychology in an undergrad level?
Yeah, so studying philosophy academically as opposed to just in your free time going to Barnes and Noble and grabbing a Nietzsche book off the shelf, it's very different. I think primarily it allows you to contextualize what you're reading. So in an undergrad course, if your professor is a good professor, they're going to give you some sort of historical background of the text you're reading. Or if it's a contemporary reading, they'll tell you what's going on in the literature at that time and what the paper is addressing, what it's defending or objecting to. And if you don't have a philosopher there who's familiar with the work that's going on, you're going to have no idea actually what's at stake with what you're reading. In philosophy, there's always something at stake, whether that's an idea or just some sort of proposal, an argument. There's always something at stake. And one thing that an academic setting does, it allows you to see what is at stake and what's actually being talked about and addressed and argued for, basically.
Definitely, it's more than just reading a book and picking off a library. But it sounds like more thinking and definitely like the way you change your perspective of thinking and critiquing. It's a lot more taking a step back and thinking more than just regurgitating what you just read.
Yeah, there's a technique to it. It's you first have to understand what you're reading before you can respond to what you've read. And so a lot of it involves rereading things multiple times and maybe even rethinking how you understood it in the first place. So yeah, there's a technique. Gotta learn how to identify the conclusions and the premises to how they got there and sort it all out. So
Sounds very familiar to my field. Definitely in psychology, there's a truth in that. To understand someone effectively, you want to make sure you're actively listening, which means not just hearing things, but also like taking time to think what they're saying and interpreting it accurately. It's obviously like communication or reading literature is something that people I guess take for granted that words are really really important.
yeah, they are
Like,
totally.
learning as an undergrad, I guess, like what are the things that you enjoy a lot when you were learning philosophy, and what is the thing that you were not super, I guess, excited part of philosophy?
Yeah, so I guess let's start with the bad. So I think the stereotype of philosophers a lot of times is true. So a lot of people think philosophers just think they know everything, and a lot of them do think that way. But it's you go through years of training and you get these skills to be good at what you do. And that's no excuse for having a big ego. But I think that is probably one of the downsides of the field, is that there's a lot of people who are just very set in their ways and they sort of refuse to see things differently. But I see that as the antithesis to what philosophy is, and which gets into my favorite part, is philosophy allowed me to open my mind and to see the world in a different light. Especially coming from a very strict religious background, I was able to encounter these new ideas and new ways to just see the world and think about it and criticize it for myself and not just see it through a lens that was given to me as a young child. So on the one hand, it can be limiting, but on the other hand, it can be incredibly world opening and freeing in a lot of ways.
That makes sense to me, because just when you learn like to open your perspective, you start to think differently and you start to realize that your environment or can also affect the way you think. So many factors can change the way you think over time. And just remember, because the goal is to open that third eye, just wake up. But that is a good point, definitely. I think that the one problem with philosophy a lot of people think is people who are really into philosophy are the know-it-alls, the very egotistical people who think they know all, and they think they find the answers to everything because they read from an old text from somebody like Plato, Socrates, or they think they know it all. Like they don't really want to explore anything else. That's something I think that's the downfall, is to be close-minded.
Yeah.
And I think philosophy is probably the opposite of that.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah, if you're coming away from a reading and you think you've got it all right, you're not doing philosophy. You're making assumptions, and you're not exercising academic humility, and that's for damn sure.
Yeah, that's good. It's humbling. Even psychology, we just don't know everything. Like, even though I have a degree in it, gosh, I'm not like the best in every topic of mental illness, or I'm not the best communicator still. I still am flawed in my ways. Still learning, that's the whole point of these like growing fields of academia. Like, you're never going to master everything. There's always questions and always research. So I think that's really cool. So you went from undergrad to graduate. So that's something I think a lot of people are in that mindset, I guess, right now of thinking about, is higher education like worth it, or why people go there. So I wonder, what made you decide wanting to take another step past undergrad to go into studying philosophy graduate level?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, I just found the field, as I mentioned, so enriching and so eye-opening and freeing that I wanted more. I wanted to be able to do it better, and I began to see how my critical thinking and my reading comprehension skills had increased, and I saw how that was enriching my life as a whole and my ability to communicate with others. And I thought, I really enjoy this, and I like the changes I'm seeing in myself from practicing this sort of thing. And so I decided, what the hell, man, I think I want to do this for a little while longer. And so I talked to one of the professors at my undergrad, and she was like, all right, if you want to do it, it's going to be hard. It's really, really tough to get into a good graduate program in philosophy. She was like, so if you want to do it, you're going to have to put in a lot of extra work. And I was like, okay, I mean, I'm not doing anything else. I'm just working and going to school, so let's do it. So she helped me write some papers and make some presentations and present them at undergrad conferences and stuff. And yeah, I love it. I love the community that I found in philosophy, because not all the philosophers are those crazy egotistical ones. There are really, really great people who genuinely want to do the right thing and genuinely want to see the world a better place. And the way they want to do that is in the classroom and through their research. So yeah, I think there's so much opportunity in philosophy to make the world a better place, both locally and globally.
Yeah, that is, when you think about it, grad school, it sounds like there's a lot of passion behind it.
Yeah.
I think that's the takeaway I would say, because I think grad school is a lot, a lot of people think, oh, just to learn more or just get that nicer degree, to showing people that they are true masters of the field. But I think it's a lot, it just defines that you're really passionate in that field. It just keeps people going and researching, because I'm sure it's not just all fun and just reading all the time.
Yeah.
But,
well, it is reading all the time, but it's not always fun, because there is a point when you want to stop reading, but you need to keep reading because it's due tomorrow, But I'm sure it varies across disciplines as far as how much passion you need to have to go to grad school. So maybe for like business or some sort of STEM field, you may not need to be as passionate, because there really is just the goal of improving your career or whatever it may be. But with humanities, and especially with philosophy, it's like you do philosophy and that's pretty much what you do. And you can go into other fields if you have a PhD in philosophy. It's totally possible. I know plenty of people who have done it, but I think the humanities especially requires a certain level of passion, because the payout practically speaking isn't going to be as rewarding, like monetarily or career-wise. So you just have to love what you do, I think.
Sounds accurate. Definitely, when you have that passion, what's the next step into grad school? Like, what are the steps, I guess, like about funding or, the whole process of getting into a grad school?
Yeah.
Wonder what's that like?
Yeah, so again, that's going to vary across disciplines, but I can give you kind of my insider 2 cents on this. So if you find yourself with a passion to learn whatever it may be, and you find yourself wanting to take that next step and get an MA or an MBA or whatever they call it in business, or a PhD in whatever, the next thing you need to do is find someone who can guide you through the process. So find a professor or some sort of mentor who's done it before and who knows the ins and outs and who knows the profession. Find someone like that and take all of the advice from them that you possibly can. Try and find someone who cares about you as well, and not just getting students out of the door, because that's going to make a huge difference. But a couple practical things to look out for when you're looking for grad schools is, number one, funding, as you said, CK. That's a very important thing. If you don't have funding, you're either going to go into a lot of debt, or you're going to have to work another job on the side, which is going to take away from your ability to really learn what you need to learn in grad school and what you want to learn in grad school. So find somewhere that funds you. You can get full funding. The program I'm in, I'm super lucky and grateful. I have 5 years of full funding, so that means I'm in my 2nd year now. So after this year, I also have 3 more years guaranteed, but they'll often extend that if you are in a good place and you need to, if you're still working on your dissertation or whatever it may be. So number 1, look for somewhere that fully funds your studies. Number 2, faculty. Look at the faculty at the schools you're interested in and see if their interests align with your interests. So, as I mentioned earlier, philosophy has dozens and dozens of subfields. And the subfield that I'm interested in is philosophy of mind. So what that involves is like studying consciousness, a lot of psychology, behavior, those sorts of things. That's what I'm interested in. And so I looked for schools that have faculty members who study that, because they're the ones who are going to be guiding me as I write my dissertation and do my own research. So it's important that you have faculty that have interests that align with yours. So funding, faculty, and department environment. So how are the grad students that are in the program with each other? Are they really competitive? Are they supportive of each other? You don't want to end up somewhere where the grad students are super competitive, because that can create a really toxic environment and just make your experience absolutely miserable. Thankfully, I ended up in a great place. I think the grad students are really supportive, lots of opportunities to socialize with them, and I feel very, very privileged to be where I'm at. So I think the three biggest things, CK, that people ought to look out for is funding, faculty, and just department environment. Probably the best.
I agree. I think those are huge things to look for to go into grad school. I think I've heard some horror stories where people don't like their cohort group,
Yeah.
or they find some toxicness, and
Yeah.
the funding can be kind of scary for some people because
Yeah.
school debt is a serious thing. I feel like a lot of people don't realize it until nowadays. I think so many people have degrees, they realize the student debt is climbing, and it could cause a lot of problems with people's everyday life, because education shouldn't be something that you have to be a slave to pay off forever. I think
knowledge should be free.
Right. That's why, like, that's one of the things that I think held me back was, do I have the funds? Can I continue studying and become like a counseling psychologist or something like that?
Yeah.
But, you know, here I am, and this is what I like to do. I think that a lot of people are willing to go through extra school. I think that when it is truly their passion, it's something that I think people need to really see that as a worthy investment.
Totally. In and of itself, like that's the thing about grad school, is that it's such a rewarding process in itself that even if, like for myself, even if I don't end up teaching philosophy at a university or community college someday, like the experiences I'm having now are so enriching that I wouldn't trade it for anything. I feel like I've grown so much, and I've only been in 1 year. I've got 4 more years to go, so I can't imagine where I'll be at the end of this.
It's an exciting journey.
Yeah, totally.
We'll obviously keep tabs on that.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
But
ask me in 2 years if I still like it, and we'll revisit.
We'll see. Hopefully we'll make a 2-year video on this. But yeah, so the whole process of grad school is definitely a rigorous thing. I think a lot of people now, I guess, have an understanding of what it's like to get into grad school. I guess, what would you say is different when you got into grad school compared to undergrad?
Oh, yeah. So several things I think come to mind right away. First and foremost, the level of rigor that you're expected to meet in your papers or whatever sort of academic work you're doing. Just the degree to which you need to be, I don't want to say perfect, but you need to do a good job, and there's really a lot of pressure to do well. Probably mostly pressure from yourself, because you're passionate about what you're doing and you want to learn it and you want to succeed. But there are also pressures, of course, from just being in the program. You have to meet certain criteria, you have to pass certain exams, you have to teach sometimes. Another thing that's different, in addition to just the level of rigor, is that your relationship with your professors is going to look very different. So whereas in undergrad it felt like it felt more hierarchical in undergrad, but now it feels like my professors are on the same level with me. Like they treat you differently. Not that I was treated poorly in undergrad, but they really talk to you as if you're one of their colleagues, as if you're a professional, and they expect the same from you. But also it's also more fun because you get to become friends with your professors. So I'll go out with some of the professors and we'll have beers on the terrace, for example. And just the other day we slammed a few pitchers together. So, you know, it's it's really fun. It's it's different in a lot of ways. Another thing that's different is instead of having like clubs, like, you know, your board game clubs and stuff, you're going to have more professional groups. So you'll have writing groups where people come together and they work on whatever paper project they're writing or working on at the time, and they'll work on those together and just kind of hold each other accountable to work on it for an hour a day or something like that. Yeah, reading groups are also a big thing. I love the Philosophy of Mind reading group, Feminist Philosophy reading group, and then all sorts of opportunities to really just broaden your horizons like you couldn't even imagine, honestly.
Sounds like a good old time. Yeah, I think that's cool. The really cool thing is to be in the level where your professor's at. I think definitely get to live out that life of like what's it like to be a professor and what's it like to be a researcher as well, because I think a lot of people go to undergrad, they don't notice what the professors are, you know, what their, I guess, their goal and purpose, what they want to do, like why are they professors. It's really cool to get close to them and to walk alongside with some of the intellectual minds out there.
Yeah, it is very neat, and you also get to see how much actually goes into this profession. It's not just getting up a couple times a week and doing a lecture. There's a lot more goes on behind the scenes. Tons of prep work goes into preparing for lectures. And in addition to teaching and grading, these professors are having to do their own research as well and try to contribute to their field, which in philosophy it's very hard to get anything published. So that's a whole nother video, I think.
Yeah,
But
could definitely go into that.
but yeah, it's been really neat to just get, like you were saying, CK, get more acquainted with
Mhm.
the profession through the relationships I'm developing with the professors in the department. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that is people would look forward to in grad school stuff. Just keep those relationships,
yeah.
forever, lifetime. I guess now, like outside of academia, it sounds like you like to go into like teaching. What would you describe? I guess what career outlook for people into who like philosophy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one that a lot of people who maybe think about getting a degree in philosophy or the humanities more broadly, I know that's something that's at the back of their mind, like, can I get a job with this sort of degree? And the answer is yes, absolutely. You totally can. Plenty of philosophers leave the field and go into things like social work, writing grants for nonprofits, politics, law, those sorts of things. Philosophy is an excellent degree to complement those fields. And not just that, but I would say just don't limit yourself. There's even plenty of STEM jobs for philosophers, like computer programming, engineering even. It's just, philosophy gives you such an attention to detail that you don't learn anywhere else, that wherever you go, you will be able to thrive and you will be able to contribute something to the workplace, and to the field just as a whole. I mean, I'm convinced of that.
I think that's something people overlook. It's like, I guess
Yeah.
some people are always saying like, oh, philosophy won't get you a job. It's kind of like a academic field that you just have to stick to.
Mhm.
I think, a lot of people use philosophy as, their base to other jobs. Obviously, philosophy, I think, could be useful, especially in psychology, like the world of mental health. I think
Yeah.
people who think out of the box can also think deeply into like why people do things. That's a good question, like behavior. But yeah, I mean, it's super applicable anywhere in the world.
Yeah, totally.
I even me, I wish I could do philosophy.
No, you can. We can
But
practice afterwards. Yeah.
indeed, I'm sure we will learn more about philosophy.
Oh, totally.
The small thing or the deeper like details of different sub genres of philosophy. I think the outlook of the job. I think it's still a possibility. Obviously, like law school. I think that's a really popular.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of philosophy majors to go into like or political science, I guess stuff like that. Yeah, I guess like also I forgot to mention the misconceptions of philosophy. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something a lot of people I think have a mindset. They think it's just only a certain handful of philosophers and there's nothing else to write about. People think it's probably just reading back and not creating what
Yeah.
misconceptions you've had like seen.
Yeah, so I think we talked about one earlier, is that all philosophers are just egotistical maniacs, and while that is true, as I said, not all of them are, and there are really good people out there as well who are philosophers. But another big misconception is a lot of people think philosophy is just like a bunch of old white dudes sitting around smoking a cigar and just talking about random stuff and not really answering questions, just talking about whatever. That's not what philosophy does. Philosophy, as I said, it looks at things critically and it examines them and it tries to make them better. So, for example, like let's say there are philosophers employed by hospitals and medical districts to actually address like ethical conundrums that hospitals have to face at some point. So even in the pandemic, just recently, there were tons of conundrums. Like who do we give the hospital beds to? That's something a philosopher would try to answer and would try to give good reasons for option A or option B.
Mm-hmm.
So this is definitely a field that is more involved in society than people realize it is. At the political level, like I said, the medical level, philosophy of education is another big field. Just like what should be our goals in education, whether it's public education, private education, higher education, whatever it may be. Those are the sorts of things that philosophy looks at and asks questions about.
Pretty deep there. I think that's true because nowadays school education, a lot of people are rethinking the way we teach children, and a lot of people are like, I think I saw an article. Some people were like, should we teach children this ethical historical event, or should we even teach them how to write cursive? Because cursive apparently is a dying thing, and honestly, like I thought it's cool, but
hey, I prefer cursive personally.
Cursive is pretty cool when you can sign and write in a different style. Like it definitely brings out, I think, people's their individuality. I think when you see people like consigned, but I think education right now has been a huge transformation. Like in the question of what to teach and what is the point like behind teaching. I feel like hopefully in the world people will definitely have more, I guess they will start to question things more, think of a more critical mindset. This is definitely a really good base to learn. I hope all of you guys like me learn more about philosophy. We're looking back in grad school. I think grad school, I guess the question is, do you have passion for the field you want to go into? I believe grad school is definitely something people should not sway away. There is some merit to it. There is definitely higher education. But make sure you make a wise decision about funding, and obviously I think that's something to tackle, or to like make sure you get all those preparations to go into grad school. Hopefully this will help you guys think more about the higher education, as well as maybe looking into philosophy as not just something to just pick up a book. But as always, I am very honored to have my guest here with me. Thank you so much, Elise, for coming by and teaching me and the other viewers and listeners more about this field that you're passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure. I'm always happy to talk philosophy anytime. Seriously, just hit me up, man.
We probably might have more videos about that.
Yeah, and like I said, there's tons of subfields, so whatever you're interested in, we can do a little chat about it.
For sure. And I think if you're interested in learning more about certain topics, put it in the comments below. Let us know what you want to learn more about, especially in the field of philosophy. I'm sure we'll have her back, and definitely she could tell us more about specific things you're wondering, and any specific questions we could probably have it answered. But if you have any other topics that you want me to basically find or talk about, let me know. And if you do like this video, please like and subscribe. You have any parting words, Elise?
Yeah, I think if you've got a passion for something, just do it. Just go out there and get it. Don't let anything stop you. Don't slow down. I believe in you. So many other people do. Even if you don't think they do, you can do it.
I do too. Even the great philosopher once said,
just do it!